Hey guys, Rafi here from the Endgame Investor, and today I want to discuss a thing called hyperinflation. I want to dispel some bad notions of what this thing is and give some more objective definitions. Precisely two definitions I want to give, and get rid of a definition that doesn't make any sense. So the definition that's widely distributed as to what hyperinflation actually is a certain rise in the level of consumer prices over a certain period of time. The reason this is a problem is because it's arbitrary. So there are two problems with defining hyperinflation as a certain rise in consumer prices. First of all, to say that hyperinflation is, let's say, a 50% rise in consumer prices over a month is immeasurable because you cannot measure the level of consumer prices. Everybody buys different things, therefore everybody has a different experience of what inflation is. Even, for example, in places like Weimar, Germany, at certain times during the hyperinflation, you could get potatoes pretty cheaply. So was there hyperinflation if potatoes could still be bought at reasonable prices? Yeah, I mean, you can't really measure every single aspect of consumer prices and what their levels are from month to month. It's all a heuristic. It's not measurable in any scientific way. The second problem is, yeah, as I said before, it's arbitrary. To say that hyperinflation is a 50% rise as opposed to a 52.5% rise is all, depending on what experts you ask to define this thing. And we all know that we don't want to rely on expert opinions anymore in pretty much anything, especially economics or other areas of life that need not be discussed ever. How can we define hyperinflation in actual objective stable terms? What is this thing? Now, I define it in two ways. Both definitions I think are accurate and consistent, and they are not arbitrary. Hyperinflation cannot happen in actual money. It cannot happen in gold and silver. Hyperinflation happens when you inflate the money substitute supply over the actual money supply at a rate fast enough that everybody notices what you're doing, and then they get out in front of the inflation rate to get rid of the currency, so you cannot gain any more real goods and services through that inflating of the currency supply. See, when you inflate the currency supply, or when the monopolist over the currency supply or the money substitute supply inflates, what he's able to do, whether it be the government or anyone else who is inflating, who has a monopoly privilege over the money supply or the money substitute supply, what he's doing is he is able to bid away real goods and services from consumers without trading any real goods and services through savings first. And that itself is theft. So hyperinflation is when the public realizes that this is theft, this game is rigged, and they get rid of the currency as fast as possible so that the inflator of the currency does not gain anything else by inflating it. The econometric Keynesian way to look at hyperinflation is to look at the rate of the increases in consumer prices over a given period of time. Now, this table is a historical table you might have seen before of the so-called, quote unquote, worst hyperinflations of all time. Now, before I get into this chart is mostly crap. Not that these aren't hyperinflations, but the exercise of ranking these things in terms of, let's see, it says here, equivalent daily inflation rate, right? And they give percentages, and rating them in terms of first place, second place, third place, it's an exercise in futility, because all it is econometric statistical voodoo, where price tables and try to calculate what consumer prices were in these obscure countries over the course of some obscure period of time. And it's really immeasurable. Essentially, in all of these cases, the value of the money substitute of the currency went to zero, and people just threw it out. And if you want to go into exactly how fast they threw it out or how fast they spent the money, it's an exercise in economic statistical geekery. The main point I wanted to make from this table is to really introduce my two definitions of hyperinflation. The first is hyperinflation is when the demand to hold a monetary medium as a monetary reserve falls to zero. That is an objective definition that applies everywhere. When nobody wants to hold the monetary medium anymore, that means the desire to hold cash balances of that monetary medium falls to zero and prices head to infinity. Exactly how much they increase every day and by some statistical measure doesn't matter. It's all for statistical geeks and to write their doctorates about in terms of ranking so they can say how much they looked into a certain period of economic history. Doesn't matter. If we look into that definition, the desire to hold cash balances falling to zero, you can see why. The way to combat hyperinflation, to prevent it from appearing, is essentially to raise interest rates above and beyond the rate at which the demand to hold these cash balances falls to zero. So, for example, in 1978 to 1980, overnight interest rates went into the double digits, as high as almost 20%. The reason that the Fed raised interest rates to that level is because it was trying to incentivize demand to stop spending money by paying interest for holding it. That is what stopped a potential hyperinflation in the late 1970s to 1980, because the government, the US government, could still afford double-digit interest rates at that point. Now we can't. Now they can't. It's impossible. So there's no way to stop a hyperinflation by raising interest rates. It wouldn't work. The second definition of hyperinflation is what I would call permanent, persistent backwardation in everything. Now, backwardation is a term that is usually reserved for futures tables, term structures in futures tables. And I will show you what that is right now. Backwardation in futures prices, which is commodities price, futures commodities, is when the price for a commodity now is higher than the price for a commodity in the future. The reason that this is called backwardation is because normally the price for a commodity now is at a discount to the price for a commodity in the future. Because if you are contracting to gain ownership of a commodity in the future now, then you are paying for storage costs and insurance costs. So the price for a commodity in the future should usually be higher than the price of that commodity in the present, except under one condition, and that is called a shortage. When there is a shortage of a commodity, producers need that commodity now rather than in the future. So they're willing to pay a premium for that commodity now, and the price of that commodity in the future will be discounted. And you will see higher prices for the commodity in the present rather than in the future. Until, let's say, we see here corn. Let's say right before the harvest of corn, there's a shortage of corn. So people that produce food and other items with corn in it will offer a premium for corn now because they need to get their supplies out of whatever they're selling to the market. And they will only offer discounted prices for corn in the future because they need to sell. They need to keep their businesses viable, running. So we see here that corn, as of the latest term structure, cash, the cash price, it says ZCY00 cash, corn in cash is 555. Whereas in December 2024, corn is only 436. So there is a premium for corn now over corn in 2024. That is a backwardated futures table. Let's move on. Here we can see corn prices since the backwardation became serious in around 2020. Corn prices went basically vertical for almost a year. They've settled down a little bit, and that can even happen in backwardation. You can still have settled down prices in backwardation, but corn prices are still in backwardation, and they're still highly elevated over the last 5 years especially. And we can move to soybeans. You can see here that the cash price for soybeans is $12.55, or this is the low, whatever. You want to go to previous, that's fine too, $12.39. And in 2024, it's $11.18. This is also a backwardated futures term structure. So you could interpret this as a shortage of soybeans. It could be interpreted that way, but I will explain in a minute why it's probably not that. Here we see soybean prices basically the same as corn prices. They skyrocketed in 2020 at the beginning of the pandemic, come down a little bit, but they are still backwardated. and that is causing the price gains. Oil term structure. Oil, previous, cash price, 68.14. Price for February 2023, 62.38, also backwardated, higher in the present, cheaper in the future. Lean hogs, this is meat prices. Meat prices, we see that the price of lean hogs in the present, cash price is 98.74. Hogs in February 22 and 23 is 73.5, also backwardated. Copper, very industrially important base metal, $4.44.8 cash price, or September 2021 price rather. And in November 2022, it's $4.26, cheaper in the future than in the present, also backwardated. Now we see also copper prices, basically the same as the other agricultural commodities been over here. It's been skyrocketing, bounced off a 200-week moving average, and it's going up again. Backwardation signals a shortage under normal monetary conditions. The problem is, with an econometric science, quote unquote, like Keynesian economics or Keynesian econometrics, which just looks at statistics dryly and doesn't interpret the human action basis for any of these statistics, they see backwardation and they interpret it as a physical shortage. But there is another thing that can cause the same pattern in backwardated futures tables, and that is an elevated demand to get rid of currency. Logically, a physical shortage of a good or an elevated demand to get rid of currency translates as the same thing, as a higher demand for the good. But you need to understand, or you need to be able to interpret the motivations behind this action to buy this good. Let's say you're exchanging dollars for soybeans. You could do it because you want the soybeans, or you could do it because you want to get rid of the dollars. There's no way for a chart or an econometrician to discern the difference between when a trader is buying a commodity because he wants the commodity or because he wants to get rid of the dollars. It's really the same thing functionally. Now, I've shown you that these tables are backwardated for many, many different commodities, and I haven't gone through all of them. It would be exhaustive, and this video would be, 15 minutes to an hour. I'm not going to do that. But backwardation in futures tables is expanded through a lot of the commodity complex. Not every single commodity, but a lot of them. Now, the only thing that these commodities have in common, all of them, is that they are traded for dollars. So when you have backwardation across the commodity complex, that is more of a disease in the monetary medium than in any specific commodity. So when you see people or the media talking about shortages in this commodity, shortages in that commodity, it's not what's happening. What's happening is demand to exit the monetary medium is accelerating across the board. Why? Because the purchasing power of this monetary medium is falling very fast. Backwardation, or the concept of prices for a good or a service or anything being more expensive in the present than in the future, can be expanded beyond futures term structures. It's a phenomenon that can be expanded to any economic action or transaction. For example, okay, the New York Fed just came out with inflation expectations, new inflation expectations charts, where they ask people, what is your expectation for inflation 1 year out or 3 years out? So 1 year would be inflation closer to the present. 3 years would be inflation closer to the future or farther away from the present. So in the same reasoning as futures term structures, you have the present prices versus the future prices. The present expectation for inflation could be interpreted as the spot price, so to speak, for inflation, whereas 3-year inflation expectations would be inflation out into the future. If you have inflation expectations out 1 year ahead, higher than expectations out 3 years into the future, then you have a backwardated inflation expectations term structure, the same thing as a backwardated chart in, say, oil or soybeans or corn or whatever it is. Now, If you go into the mind of someone who is being affected by a hyperinflationary monetary system, of course, his inflation expectations closer to the present would be higher than his inflation expectations further out into the future, because his concern primarily is getting rid of the money substitute, of the monetary medium, because he expects prices to rise even faster. So he wants real goods and services to preserve his purchasing power. Now, when he goes out and hoards food or hoards whatever it is, or furniture or whatever, it doesn't mean that he actually wants that stuff, or that stuff is being demanded. His demand is to get rid of money for anything that holds its value. That is the human action behind what he's doing. So if you ask him, what are your inflation expectations 3-5 years out? You ask someone who's in the midst of hyperinflation, he's going, who cares? Who gives a crap what inflation is going to be 3 years out? I need to get rid of this money now before it loses everything. He's not going to have any answer. He's going to say, what do you mean 3 years out? What do you mean 1 year out? Like, 1 month out? What about 1 week out? What about tomorrow? I got to get rid of it now. But there's more than that. There's another backward-dated piece of evidence here that shows that hyperinflation is getting closer and closer. And that is the backward-dated term structure of the producer price index itself. This thing came out on Friday, I believe. And it was dissected pretty well by Wolf Street. And here I'm reproducing his chart that he put in his article. And the link will be in the description below if you want to find his work on that. It's very well done. He goes into the final demand structure versus the intermediate demand. Here you have 4 lines. You have intermediate demand. Stage 4, stage 3, stage 2, and stage 1. The lower you get in stage, the closer you are to raw material. And the higher you get in stage, the closer you are to final demand or final product on the supermarket shelves or whatever retail shelf it is. So here you see a highly backward dated PPI term structure where the higher stages of production, stage 1, 2, and 3, are experiencing much higher rates of inflation than the stage 4, which is 2 stages away from the supermarket shelves. Stage 4 is the last stage of intermediate demand, and then you have final demand, then you have consumer prices. So if the intermediate demand stage has prices rising faster, much faster year over year, than the stage that is closer to consumption, you have a backward dated PPI term structure, which is also a form of backwardation, just like any commodity. Right? When everything in the economy becomes more expensive now than it is estimated it will be in the future, everything is backwardated, which means everyone wants to get rid of money at the same time, which means it's a positive feedback loop, which feeds back into hyperinflation and ever rising prices that do not stop. The third point was that a bird's eye view of economics, in terms of just chartistry and looking at statistics and drawing pictures and writing equations, right? That does not discern human actions. A bird's eye view economics cannot discern human action or motivation. It can only read statistics. It cannot tell you why they are happening. In order to really study economics, you have to be able to discern the motivations behind human action, which is what the Austrian school tries to do. The last point is shortages as a flight from currency per se look identical on a chart, but in terms of human action, they are very different. Why are they different? Because the remedies for each are almost the opposite. The shortages of a good, physical shortages, when you don't have enough, the solution is simple. You produce more of it. Get more producers to produce more of the stuff that pushes prices down, and then you can get back into economic balance, into supply and demand meeting. But if everything is in backwardation at the same time, and the prices of everything are going up, and the shortages persist, then the only remedy for that is to restore faith in the monetary medium. And the only way to do that is to pay people more interest to hold that monetary medium than they are losing through their perception of rising prices into the future. Very, very different solutions to very, very different problems that look exactly the same on a chart. Now I want to go into a few articles here that show you just how widespread these so-called quote-unquote shortages are extending. Here we have an article from September 10th from the BBC. Title, Food Shortages Could Be Permanent, warns industry body. How the hell could food shortages be permanent if not for the problem of the monetary medium itself, of the money substitute being inflated to such a degree that prices cannot catch up to quell demand fast enough for supply and demand to go back into balance. This is only possible if the value of the monetary medium is losing value faster than prices can rise to compensate. So here it says, labor shortages in the food industry means consumers may not be able to find the products they like in supermarkets, an industry boss has warned. The just-in-time system is no longer working, and I don't think it'll work again, Food and Drink Federation boss Ian Wright said at an Institute for Government event on Friday. Mr. Wright warned that the UK was in for permanent shortages. However, it didn't mean the country would run out of food, he stressed. Oh, well, thank God for that. But a spokesman for the government said it did not recognize claims of permanent shortage. Did not recognize. No, we don't. That's not going to happen. Never. Everything will be fine, the government says. Trust it, because it knows everything. The UK has a highly resilient food supply chain, which has coped well in responding to unprecedented challenges, he said. Yeah, that makes me feel a lot better, thanks. Okay, anyway, enough of that horse crap. Here's another one from September 10th also. CNBC, paint is getting costlier and harder to find. And this could be just the beginning. 4, how long the disruptions will last is a matter of debate among policymakers and economists. See, the only thing that they don't mention here is the money. From zippers to glass, shortages, basic goods hobble U.S. economy. And they'll give the same hackneyed, tired answers for why this is happening. They'll say supply chain issues, blah, blah, blah. Here, for Lauren Rash, it's the little things that have started production at her tent factory here, like the many shades of black Velcro. Her company, Diamond Brand, just launched a new line of high-end wall tents called the Liminal. That is so interesting. Before supply chain breakdowns and shortages swept the world in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic, buying the bits and pieces for an assembly line was often as easy as clicking a button and waiting a few days or at most a few weeks for delivery. Not anymore. Shortages of metals, plastics, wood, and even liquor bottles are now the norm. See, this is the problem of the money, of the monetary system, and not of the individual goods and services that are having supply chain issues. The reason you're having supply chain issues is because too many people with too many dollars are putting bids on these things, and the supply cannot keep up. It's the problem with the dollar, not the stuff. One more thing here, and this is Mohammed El-Arian, who I kind of like him for a Keynesian econometrician. He's kind of soothing to listen to in a weird way, and he has a mustache, which is nice. Okay, so El-Arian fears not transitory stagflation as Maersk exec warns only lower consumer demand will fix broken supply chains. Only lower consumer demand will fix broken supply chains. I love the way Zero Hedge puts this, right? It says here, the boss of one of the world's largest port and terminal operators, which is Maersk, does have a solution. Stop buying so much shit. It's a great line. We need lower consumer demand growth to give the supply chain time to catch up, or differently spread out growth. Over a long period of time, we will need to recover efficiency. So the only solution to this is to lower consumer demand. Stop buying stuff. I mean, the price mechanism works by raising prices for stuff so that demand is what goes away, so that you are able to bring supply and demand back in balance. That's why economists say the cure for high prices is higher prices. But that doesn't work when the dollar, or the monetary medium that serve as a gauge of prices, is losing value faster than supply chains can keep up with it. That is the beginning of hyperinflation, because it shows that the desire to hold cash balances as a monetary reserve is falling closer and closer to zero. Is it at zero yet? No, but that's where it's headed. One more thing I want to show you. Some smoke on the water by Deep Purple. This is a chart from Bloomberg. This shows the choke on the water, fire in the sky. Bottlenecks at key U.S. West Coast ports have lingered for almost a year. And in the blue, or the purple maybe, I'm colorblind, I can't really tell, but it would be appropriate if it was purple, shows that the number of anchored container ships waiting to offload at LA Long Beach is at record highs, which means the demand for shipping goes higher and higher and higher, and the price of shipping, even though it has gone vertical, cannot keep up with the burgeoning demand. But again, demand to buy stuff for that stuff is the same thing on a chart functionally as demand to get rid of the monetary medium in exchange for stuff. What exactly is the buyer's demand is impossible to tell on a dry chart. You have to go into the human action motivations for this. And as hyperinflation can be defined as the desire to hold cash balances falling to zero, that is when everything is divided by zero, goes to infinity prices, and you have hyperinflation, or when everything in an economy is backwardated. Consumer goods, commodities, everything is backwardated. The price of everything goes to infinity, and the monetary medium dies. In that scenario, that is when you see the monetary metals of gold and silver going essentially to infinity in dollar terms. And you'll have to buy goods and services in gold terms rather than in dollar terms because the dollar will be undefined. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I do know that at the end of this process, gold and silver essentially go to infinity, which does not mean that they have infinite value. It does not. All it means is that the dollar has zero value, and then you have to start pricing things in gold and silver directly, or make a new monetary substitute for gold and silver when the dollar dies. My conclusion is the evidence for our coming hyperinflation keeps building. And though it will take some more time, we do not know how much time it will take. But once the public wakes up to what is going on, there will be no stopping this because there is no raising interest rates to the rates they will need to be when everyone catches on to what's going on. In 1980, it was about 20%. There's no way they're going to get anything close to that this time. And if they do, they're going to destroy the entire banking system. So if you haven't signed up for the Endgame Investor yet, you can get a 2-week free trial to see exactly what I'm doing. Just click on the link in the description below, and you'll get a dose of what I write. This is Rafi from the Endgame Investor. So long for now.